Hey guys, today I'd like to cover something that most people don't even think about, much less talk about, and that is how the butt of a cue affects overall deflection of the cue. You always hear about the shaft when it comes to deflection or lack thereof. And while, yes, the shaft is the most predominant part of developing a low deflection cue, the butt also affects deflection. Deflection, and for those that don't know, most people do, but just in case you don't, I'll cover that as well real quick. Deflection in pool refers to the amount of cue ball or how much the cue ball deviates from its initial path when struck with English or side spin. The design and weight distribution of the cue, including the butt, can influence how much the cue deflects when applying English. A heavier or more dense butt can reduce deflection because it affects the cue's overall mass and stiffness, thereby altering how the cue transfers energy to the cue ball upon impact. Players often choose cues with specific butt designs to minimize deflection and improve accuracy when using side spin. Now, we don't really discuss how the butt plays a part in the reduction of deflection overall, but there are three main things to consider when we talk about deflection, and three main things that affect deflection. The primary one, yes, being the shaft. The second is the butt of the cue. And lastly, it is the player. The player actually does affect how much deflection you're going to have when you use a particular shaft. Your technique, your execution, things like that will determine how much that cue deflects. So again, you have three main things to think about. You have the shaft, the butt, and then you. Let's start by talking about, and again, I'm going to try to keep this related to the butt only. I have a couple of videos already out there talking about deflection reduction in shafts, but I wanted to put one out there talking about how the butt directly affects deflection. And the first thing is weight distribution. The weight distribution along the length of the cue, including the butt, influences its moment of inertia. A cue with more weight towards the back end of it will have a higher moment of inertia, which can reduce and does reduce cue ball deflection when applying English. Now, that's both good and bad because, and you have to find your happy medium, but a rear weighted cue, a cue that's weighted in the back, a rear weighted cue is going to allow for less deflection, or it's going to introduce less deflection, but it's also going to sacrifice power. So you kind of have to find your happy medium between those two. A stiffer shaft, often associated with cues that have denser butts, tend to deflect less. So what that means is if you have a stiffer shaft at the back end and a stiffer butt overall with a more flexible front end of your shaft, you're going to have less deflection. Then you have feedback and control. Players often prefer cues with a butt design that provides better feedback and control over the cue ball. This includes how a cue feels during a shot, which can affect the application of English and ultimately the amount of deflection. And then you have personal preference as well. The impact of the butt on deflection can also be a matter of personal preference and playing style. Some players may find cues with certain butt designs more comfortable or effective for minimizing deflection based on their technique and stroke mechanics, which is why I mentioned earlier that you have to include yourself in this as well. And then you have material and construction. The materials used in the construction of a butt can affect its density and stiffness. For example, Cues made from denser woods or materials like carbon fiber tend to have less flex and thus can minimize deflection. And then you have your balance point. The balance point of the cue, influenced by the butt design, affects how the cue feels and reacts during a shot. A cue with a more rear weighted balance point, often influenced by the butt, can potentially reduce deflection by stabilizing the cue's movement upon impact. Like I said earlier, a more rear weighted cue is going to offer you more or less deflection, but you're going to sacrifice a little bit of power because the more forward weighted your cue, the more natural power you're going to have. So you have to find your happy balance in between those. And then we have the taper and diameter. The taper of the butt, this is about the butt now, the taper of the butt, how it narrows toward the shaft, from the butt to your shaft, and its diameter can influence the overall stiffness and feel of the cue. A thicker butt or a different taper profile can impact how energy is transferred from the cue to the cue ball, affecting its overall deflection. If you take into consideration the different thicknesses of the butt of the cue, what I mean by that is the back end of the cue, not the joint, but the back end, your taper profile. Thicker taper profiles, or the thicker the butt, the back where your grip hand is, the thicker that is, the more apt you are for it to be a rear weighted or more rear weighted than normal, and that will overall reduce your deflection as well. And then we'll talk about briefly, because I have to mention it. I said it was going to be about butts, but I have to mention the shaft as well sometimes. You have to think about the Q-tip and the ferrule. While not directly part of the butt, the connection between the shaft and the butt can influence deflection. A well-designed joint and properly installed tip can enhance energy transfer and reduce unintended deflection. And then you have player technique. Ultimately, while the cue design, including the butt, can affect deflection, a significant factor is also the player's technique. Experienced players often adjust their stroke and use techniques to compensate for deflection based on their cue's characteristics. Now, with that being said, I am a firm believer that you have two types of people. You have that one person that will take their game and their ability and manipulate it to fit the cue that they're using. And then you have the other person that will take the cue and modify it to fit their playing style and their game. And that's what I recommend. If you have been playing for more than 10 years, don't change the way you play. Change what you play with. And I've said this before, I'm not going to give a carpenter a finishing hammer to frame up a room. I'm going to give him a framing hammer. So basically, what I'm saying is, I'm not going to change the way that carpenter is swinging his hammer. I'm going to change the hammer he's swinging. And the same thing, in my opinion, should be applied to those that have been playing for more than 10 years. Don't change the way you play. You've already developed your good and bad habits, and it's pretty much ingrained in you now. It would be a much longer learning curve or transitional curve to change the way you play and to develop new habits than it would be to change the cue that you're playing with to fit those habits that you've already developed. And then you have weight and mass. The weight of the butt in combination with the shaft affects the overall mass of the cue. A heavier butt alters the cue dynamics, potentially reducing deflection by providing more stability and reducing the cue's tendency to twist upon impact. Then you have vibration dampening. Some cues are designed or construction methods that dampen vibrations. A butt with effective vibration dampening properties can contribute to a more stable shot, reducing deflection and improving accuracy. Now, when I say vibration dampening, I'm not talking about the removal of feedback in your hand. I'm talking about the removal of harmonic vibration. Long-term performance. Over time, and people don't really take this into consideration either, but over time, cues undergo changes in their properties due to weather, wear and tear, humidity, temperature changes. The design and material of the butt influences how resilient the cue is to these factors, potentially affecting deflection over the cue's lifespan. Then you have balance and feel. Beyond technical aspects, the balance and feel of a cue are crucial factors in reducing deflection. A well-balanced cue with a comfortable feel can help players maintain consistent stroke mechanics, minimizing unintended cue ball deviation. Butt taper or butt shape and design. The shape and design of the butt can influence deflection in several ways. Your butt diameter, like I mentioned earlier, a thicker or thinner butt can affect how the cue flexes upon impact, thereby influencing overall deflection. Butt length. The length of the butt can alter the balance and weight distribution of the cue, which in turn affects deflection characteristics. The grip area. The grip area of the butt can impact how comfortably and consistently a player can execute shots, affecting their ability to control the deflection. As I mentioned, you have to factor in yourself as well when you're trying to make this deduction. Material stiffness. That's another good thing. Material stiffness. The stiffness of the materials used in the butt during the construction process can affect deflection. For example, cues made of denser woods like your ebonies and stuff like that, or carbon fiber, tend to be stiffer, potentially, well, not potentially, definitely, reducing the cue's tendency to deflect with side spin as applied, therefore reducing overall deflection. And then you have your balance point and your cue dynamics. The balance point of the cue, determined largely by the butt design, affects its overall dynamics during the shot. A well-balanced cue can enhance the stability and reduce unintended deflection, leading to more accurate and controlled shots. And I mentioned that earlier, but I wanted to re-emphasize that. And then your feedback and your feel. The feedback players receive from the cue butt, including how it feels during a shot, can influence their ability to control deflection. A cue that provides clear feedback and feels comfortable can enhance shots' consistency and accuracy. And then finally, we have your joint design. People ask, well, okay, we know that your shaft plays a role in overall deflection, and now you know that the butt plays a role in overall deflection. Does the joint design play a role in overall deflection? Yes, it does. While primarily affecting the shaft, the design and quality of the joint minimizes energy loss and ensures efficient transfer of power from the butt to the shaft, thereby reducing deflection overall. So depending on the type of pin that you have or use and the type of joint material that you use will determine how much power is transferred from the butt to the shaft and how much feedback is transferred from the shaft to the butt to your hand, and overall how much deflection it has. And so at the end of the day, you have to take in and consider multiple things. It's not just the shaft. And that's really all you hear about is shaft, shaft, shaft when it comes to low deflection. But you have to consider the shaft, the butt, and you as a player. All three factors have to be considered when it comes to how much or how little deflection your cue is going to produce. Because your cue, you're going to have a certain amount of deflection when you're shooting with your cue. You hand me your cue, it's going to have a different amount of deflection overall. So it's player dependent as well. And these things, I wanted to cover this because it's so misunderstood, this whole topic. And my entire life I have dedicated to understanding and breaking down cue mechanics to allow me to produce a better product at the end of the day. And I feel that this knowledge that I've gained over the past 30 years plus 40 something years of table time and competition, it would be useful to you guys, which is the whole reason that I created this channel. And I hope that you do find it useful. I hope you do find it informative, and I hope that it has helped you. If you would, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so. I have many, many more videos in the books to come in the future, in the near future. And I love to hear from you guys. Leave me some comments, not only with just remarks or other topics to potentially talk about and discuss, but let me know if I have helped you and if I've helped your game. I hope you enjoyed the video. It wasn't a very long one, but I thought it was well deserved, and I think it's very informative. I am currently working on another video that's still related to deflection and cue mechanics, and I look forward to getting that one out as soon as I possibly can. Please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.